And welcome into Getting Help from Uncle Sam. Well, there's the Alabama Trust Program. It's administered by the State Treasurer's Office. So we thought, let's go to the top and find out what it's all about. Young Boozer, State Treasurer, so glad to have you back again. First, let our viewers know, what does the Alabama Trust Fund, what does that really mean?
Okay. Not a lot of people know about it.
Good.
It is basically a sovereign wealth fund that was set up in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
In the 1970s, we discovered natural gas off of Mobile Bay, and it began to be produced, and we get a royalty off.
And that was in the water.
Yes.
It was coming out of those wells came out of the water.
Yes.
Yeah.
And and they produce natural gas. Okay, so
abundance of natural gas.
They did,
Okay.
but they're old. We'll get into this story too.
All right.
They were discovered in the late 1970s. The trust fund was set up in the early 1980s by Fob James in order to take the royalties and invest them, and then use the income from that to support the activities of the state of Alabama.
That's a wonderful way to do it.
It was a great way to do
Yes.
it. It was very basic, and over time what we have found is that we needed to make some changes in that. And the first change was don't just invest in investment securities, because that income's not enough. You had to have a portfolio of equities and securities in order to get the most return that you could in order to build that fund. Fast forward to today, the fund is about $4 billion and has grown dramatically, especially over the last 8 years. It's grown quite a bit because of the changes that we made back in 2012. We passed a constitutional amendment to change the structure of the trust and to come up with a spending policy and better position us so that we know how much money we're getting on an annual basis from that fund. It has grown dramatically. It is the interesting thing that's happened recently is that those properties, those natural gas properties, have been sold by Exxon and Mobil to another operator who bought them relatively inexpensively and is going to increase the production. So, so what's happened is that if you're in the oil and gas business, you make a find and it produces dramatically at the beginning, and then there is a decline curve. It tapers off, and typically 6 to 8% a year. So given the age of these properties, the production has gone down significantly. In the last year or so, natural gas price has just exploded.
Yes.
So it's gone from about $3 an MCF to $9 an MCF. And
it's basically tripled.
Basically tripled, and it's tailed off a little bit recently, but our revenues are up. So in that, in the trust, we have the securities portfolio. It generates approximately $175, $180 million a year for the state of Alabama for expenditures. It also produces $15 million a year for the Forever Wild. And the cities and the counties get approximately that same amount of money out of it. So it is a revenue generator for the state. It is the most valuable financial asset for the state of Alabama. And it is being run much more efficiently and much more effectively now than it was in the past. So we have sort of changed sort of a sleepy income trust fund into something that is dynamic and is doing a lot of great good for the state of Alabama.
So the revenues coming out of there, are they earmarked to an extent? In other words, you mentioned
the ones I mentioned are the
like
ones that
$195 million. Is that goes to the state troopers, or
no, it doesn't. It goes to the general fund.
Just the general fund.
Yes.
And then, of course, then the legislature obviously administers that general fund.
They would make appropriations out of that. That would be part of their appropriations. Yeah.
That's a good way to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, like you say, it's with everything happening right now, energy is becoming a really hot commodity.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to go away.
No.
No. And we're very fortunate to have those leases down there.
We are, and we're very fortunate for a couple of things. First of all, with the price going up the way it is, it gives incentive to the owners to increase production and to drill maybe additional wells or improve the flow out of the wells they already have. So that could mean additional revenues for us in the future.
Okay, so for our viewers, if you want to get more information on this, again, you go to your treasurer's website.
That's right.
And there will be a tab there for the fund.
You go to treasury.alabama.gov.
Okay.
And you go to our landing page, and there's a click item there for resources. Click on resources, and then there's a listing for the Alabama Trust Fund.
The Alabama Trust Fund. You can find everything you wanted to know, but were afraid to ask.
That's right.
But I'm not afraid to ask, and that's the reason you were here.
And don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to come to the
Absolutely.
website.
Great. Well, Young, thank you again for, first and foremost, always responding well to our show, and second of all, for the great job you're doing as state treasurer. Like I said on our first show we did together, some people are meant for our job. You're meant for this job, buddy.
It's the most fun job I've ever had.
That's great. That's great. And just remember this, they're here to serve you, the citizens of the state of Alabama, and we'll be right back right after this.